When we think of José Mourinho, we often focus on his legacy as a serial winner. His triumphs with top teams across Europe have cemented him as one of the greatest managers of all time. But this time, I want to shift the narrative. This isn't about the victories or the glory. It's about a darker chapter in his career, a chapter when he took on a team that simply didn't want to win. This is the story of José Mourinho. At Manchester United, a club caught in a turbulent moment of its history. To understand why Mourinho would even consider managing Manchester United in 2016, you need to look at where the club was. Just 3 years after Sir Alex Ferguson's retirement, the team was struggling to regain its former glory. The post-Ferguson era had been a mess. David Moyes was the first to try to fill the legendary manager's shoes, but after just 10 months, he left the team in disarray. Under Moyes, United finished 7th, their worst-ever Premier League finish with a low points tally. The club then turned to Ryan Giggs as interim manager, but he resigned after only 4 matches, unable to handle the immense pressure. Next, United hired Louis van Gaal, hoping his pedigree would be the solution. But despite spending over $200 million, Van Gaal couldn't bring success beyond a 4th-place finish and an FA Cup trophy, hardly enough to keep him in the job. This led to his dismissal, and the position was wide open for Mourinho, who had recently been fired by Chelsea despite winning the Premier League just 7 months earlier. Mourinho's time at Chelsea had fallen apart quickly. After requesting a bigger budget and clashing with some of his staff, he lost the dressing room, and the team plummeted to near relegation. By the time he was let go, his reputation had taken a hit. Still, Mourinho had been linked with United for a while, having a solid relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson. United was desperate for a winner, and Mourinho fit the bill. With Pep Guardiola moving to Manchester City the same year, many felt Mourinho's appointment was a response to City's new powerhouse status. But United's squad wasn't in great shape. Mourinho was inheriting a team that was a far cry from the one Guardiola had taken over. Manchester United's most notorious player at the time was Wayne Rooney, whose best years were behind him, and the squad lacked real star power. David De Gea was one of the few exceptions, but his position was far from secure. The team lacked a true goal scorer, with Anthony Martial leading the charge with just 17 goals across all competitions. Mourinho wasted no time in addressing these issues. His first move was to sign Zlatan Ibrahimovic, a player he knew well from their time at Inter Milan. At 34 years old, Zlatan was hardly a long-term solution, but he was still a prolific goal scorer, fresh off a season where he netted 50 goals and provided 19 assists in 51 matches. A hungry player like him was exactly what Mourinho needed. Next, Mourinho focused on United's shaky defense. Players like Darmian, Smalling, and Valencia weren't cutting it, and while young players like Shaw and Jones showed potential, injuries were a constant threat. Mourinho's defense was patched together with limited resources. He only managed to bring in Eric Bailly, leaving the back line far from ideal. With little backing from the board, he also had to settle for a midfield that, while experienced, lacked the dynamism needed to compete at the highest level. Schweinsteiger, Mata, Carrick, and Fellaini were not the players to rejuvenate a United squad in desperate need of change. Finally, in the transfer market, Mourinho made a few smart moves to shake things up. He signed Henrik Mkhitaryan, the Bundesliga Player of the Year and the top assist provider, for $26 million, a potential bargain. Most importantly, he secured the signing of Paul Pogba, one of the brightest young talents in world football, for a then-record $89 million. It was clear that Mourinho had one goal in mind: to win, no matter the cost. This was especially ironic because United had let him leave for free just 4 years earlier. It's well known that Mourinho preferred N'Golo Kante over Pogba, but according to sources, the club pushed for the latter to fix their past mistake. In the end, the transfer caused even more friction within the squad, something Mourinho didn't need at that time. The season started with Mourinho winning his first trophy at United, the Community Shield, after a 2-1 victory over Leicester City. Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored the winning goal, but things quickly took a downturn in the league. By the fourth match, Guardiola's Manchester City had already beaten United, and by the eighth match, Mourinho was suspended for criticizing the referees. Injuries were piling up. Players like Shaw, Jones, and Bailey were sidelined, and Mourinho's frustrations were becoming more visible, culminating in a public outburst that saw him sent to the stands. Despite all of this, the season wasn't a total disaster. In the cup competitions, Mourinho found a way to succeed. He knocked Guardiola's City out of the EFL Cup and continued to dominate, defeating teams like West Ham, Hull City, and Southampton, claiming his second trophy of the season. By mid-February, United had already won more trophies in one season than they had in the post-Ferguson era, but the most significant success was still to come. United's Europa League campaign had been uninspiring, with draws against Fenerbahce and Feyenoord in the group stage, followed by a rocky start to the knockout rounds. They even struggled against Rostov and Anderlecht, needing extra time to get past the Belgians. But somehow, they made it to the final, where they faced Ajax, an impressive young team featuring stars like Frenkie de Jong, Hakim Ziyech, and Matthijs de Ligt. Despite Ajax dominating possession and creating chances, United managed to hold on and win 2-0. Henrik Mkhitaryan's goal was crucial, and the team's resilience proved Mourinho's ability to deliver silverware, even with a squad far from perfect. Despite the triumphs, many fans and media outlets were less than impressed. Mourinho had delivered 3 trophies, including United's first European trophy in 90 years, but critics were already labeling him a villain. His boring football was the main complaint, and while the trophies shielded him from the worst of the criticism, it was clear that his style of play wasn't winning over the fans. As Mourinho himself put it, "There are a lot of poets in football, but poets don't win much." However, the second season proved more challenging. Mourinho had built a reputation for winning in his second season at every club, but with United finishing 6th in his first season, it seemed unlikely he would continue that streak. The board wasn't helping either. After missing out on key defensive targets like José Jiménez and Rafael Varane the previous season, the club made some questionable decisions, including signing the relatively untested Victor Lindelof from Benfica, something Mourinho wasn't happy about. Then things got even more bizarre. With Wayne Rooney gone and Ibrahimovic sidelined with injuries, Mourinho desperately wanted to make a statement by signing a world-class forward. His pursuit of Neymar was thwarted by PSG, who simply outbid United. He also came close to signing Antoine Griezmann, but Atletico Madrid's transfer ban prevented the deal from going through. Mourinho's second season at Manchester United started with high hopes but quickly turned into a season of frustration. The club's transfer activity was again under scrutiny. While United did manage to sign Romelu Lukaku from Everton for $75 million, a move that made sense given his familiarity with Mourinho from their time at Chelsea, the signing paled in comparison to the potential arrivals of Neymar or Griezmann. Lukaku was a solid player, but he wasn't the marquee signing fans were hoping for. Beyond that, there was little activity in the transfer market. This lack of movement was uncharacteristic for a manager known for shaking up his squad. United's early form in the league was impressive, going 12 matches unbeaten and scoring 4 or more goals in half of them. Despite this, they were still 2 points behind Manchester City, who seemed to be on another level. The situation became even more dire when United lost to Huddersfield Town, of all teams, and then again to Chelsea. Despite this, they managed a strong run in the second half of the season, going 13 matches with only 1 defeat to City. However, even with only 3 losses in the first 24 matches, City were running away with the title, leading United by 12 points, with a near-perfect record. Mourinho's frustrations boiled over as he faced the constant criticism of being outspent and outgunned by City. In one memorable rant, he complained that City were buying fullbacks for the price of strikers, and it was hard to argue with him. City's squad looked superior in almost every position when the two sides faced off, and it seemed as though Mourinho's chances of winning the league were slipping away, despite the impressive performances from his team. January brought a new opportunity to turn things around. With Zlatan Ibrahimovic leaving for LA Galaxy and Alexis Sanchez's future uncertain at Arsenal, a trade was arranged. Mkhitaryan for Sanchez. While on paper this seemed like a good deal, things quickly went awry. Sanchez, once one of the most dynamic players in the Premier League, never fit into Mourinho's system. His wages, reportedly $500,000 a week, soon became a source of tension. The Chilean scored just 5 goals in 2 years, making him one of the worst value transfers in history. His arrival only increased instability at United and disrupted the development of players like Anthony Martial, who had been showing promise. As the season progressed, the pressure on Mourinho grew. After months of defending Paul Pogba, Mourinho finally cracked. In a match against Tottenham, he substituted Pogba, leading to a public confrontation on the sidelines. The fallout was immediate. Club legends like Paul Scholes began publicly criticizing Pogba and the squad, and this division was felt throughout the team. The atmosphere turned toxic, and United's form dipped drastically, culminating in a series of defeats over the final stretch of the season. Despite these setbacks, United finished in second place, 19 points behind Manchester City, who set a record-breaking 100 points. Mourinho's side ended with 81 points, an impressive tally in itself, more than Leicester had when they won the title just 2 years prior. In fact, United had more points per game than Sir Alex Ferguson's side in 6 of his 13 Premier League title-winning seasons. Mourinho, ever the optimist, would later reflect, saying that finishing second with United was one of the greatest achievements of his career. "People don't know what happened behind the scenes," he said. His perspective was often at odds with the media narrative, but his achievements were undeniable. However, despite his achievements, the absence of silverware left him vulnerable to criticism. An early exit in the Champions League and a defeat in the FA Cup final to Chelsea left Mourinho without that crucial shield. Things began to unravel, culminating in Rui Faria, Mourinho's assistant manager for 15 years, leaving the club. As Mourinho's frustrations reached a boiling point, his relationship with Paul Pogba deteriorated further. After Rui Faria's departure, Mourinho's control over the locker room weakened, and Pogba's discontent became more public. Pogba, who had just won the World Cup with France, claimed that he couldn't give his best if he wasn't happy. Mourinho, in typical fashion, responded by telling Pogba to ask for a transfer if he was so unhappy. The tension grew when Pogba openly criticized Mourinho's tactics, calling for a more attacking style of play. In retaliation, Mourinho stripped Pogba of the captain's armband and publicly downplayed his importance, calling him a good player, not a special player. The situation escalated with a series of dramatic incidents. Mourinho and Pogba were filmed in a heated confrontation at training. Mourinho ranted to the media after a win against Newcastle, and he even chased down Chelsea's assistant coach. The culmination came when Mourinho referred to Pogba as a virus, accusing him of poisoning the squad's mentality and disrespecting his teammates and fans. Pogba's agent, Mino Raiola, then demanded a $200,000 weekly pay raise for Pogba to stay at the club, hinting that Lukaku, another Raiola client, could also leave if the demands were ignored. United's board, facing mounting pressure, chose to part ways with Mourinho. On the day of his sacking, Pogba mocked Mourinho on Instagram before quickly deleting the post. It was clear to many that the situation at United had become a mirror image of what happened during Mourinho's final days at Chelsea, a manager at odds with key players, leading to his eventual departure. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this chapter of Mourinho's career at Manchester United. Please leave your opinions in the comments section below.